Witam po przerwie.
Welcome after the break, and now we are going to start the second plenary session, and we have the three presentations. The first speaker will be Waldemar Kubisz, Leica Geosystems, innovative technologies of catching and modeling of reality. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Waldemar Kubisz, and I am the manager of Leica Geosystems, which is part of Hexagon Group, the world leader of manufacturing and distribution of all types of measuring systems. And I'm talking about the geospatial systems. And our customers are usually land surveying companies, designers and constructors who on a regular basis need measurements of the surrounding reality and architectonical data, also including the beam. We supply simple solutions like tachymeters, but we also supply more complex, complicated land surveying equipment, and also very advanced technologies like 3D technologies, like capture technologies. And this is the department I work for, and I represent that department. And today I'm going to give you information on stationary 3D scanners and also kinematic scanners. This is some kind of surprise. So let me invite you now for a short video called Power of Scanning. Siła skanowania. To nigdy nie jest przypadkowa sytuacja. Zawsze jest to wynik bardzo intensywnych działań i celowych, a także pewnego ukierunkowania, a także odpowiedniego środowiska. Jest to zawsze wybór spośród wielu alternatyw. Dokładność to tradycja. To jest część naszego DNA. Dokładność to jest nasze zobowiązanie. Bardzo precyzyjna produkcja. Szczególna uwaga poświęcona detalom. I wykorzystanie ekspertów. Dostarczamy produkty zaprojektowane indywidualnie do celu w sposób spójny i dokładny. Precyzja, dokładność. Dążymy do doskonałości, do perfekcji w każdym kroku, wykorzystując wszystkie możliwości, jakie tylko są.
We create it, accepting nothing as nearly right or good enough. Engineered for total certainty and tested to the extremes. These value-engineered products are the definition of exacting standards. The world has changed from quality to quantity. Why not have both? From the leaders in 3D reality capture, this is the power of scanning.
Thank you. The video underlines one of our features. This is reliability. And now, being more to the ground, let me show you another video about the daily usage of 3D scanning by architects. Please enjoy the next video with my comments. So the reality on a construction site may be different. So this is a standard construction site. So an architect is considering what should he do with the reality, how to copy it and how to redesign it. And it will be supported by by Leica Geosystem with SLK I30, this is the scanner which quickly, safely, accurately will copy the surrounding reality. So this is a dot cloud collected within a dozen or so minutes. And this will be further processed. So this is one of the possible scanners which can be applied, and this is processing. The next step when we are heading the designing process, we create data clouds and the CAD systems like this is the image of CloudWorks for AutoCAD. This is a great plugin which facilitates modeling in dot clouds. If you use our soft, it is very easy when you can transfer open source data, vectorized data can be translated to our hub, SolidWorks, AutoCAD. CloudWorks is a powerful tool to be used with CAD as a plugin, and the entire work is carried out quickly. And first of all these designs are based on actual data scanned and measured directly before taking the next step to the designing. So it is reliability. And designers or architects are happy. That's a dream. It's good to have a friend like Leica 3D60. Welcome again, and let me invite you to our workshop at 2 p.m. Sorry, 3:45, and we will be demonstrating live operation of scanners. I mean BLK and also 360 scanners. You know them very well, and they are very well established in the market. And we are also going to demonstrate video and some examples of final processes which are intended to create BIM systems. And tomorrow we are going to have a workshop, like Hexagon workshop, and Vector Software Company, which is also a part of Hexagon, is going to demonstrate Bricks CAD system together with our Leica Scanbox and VectorSoft. That will be at 1:45. So see you tomorrow at 5:45, today at 5:45 at our workshop. Please join us. Feel free to be invited.
Thank you very much, Waldek, thank you. And the next presentation by Marcin Sokołowski, British Standards Institution, benefits from carrying out effective BIM certification on projects and company. Welcome, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Let me move on to the presentation, and I will try to very briefly discuss the benefits, although the topic is so broad that I do encourage you to ask questions and contact me after the presentation. A few words about myself to start with. Generally, since 2009, I have been in BIM subject in various companies, corporations, or smaller ones in many geographical locations. For 1.5 years, I am also on BSI Poland, but also acting globally. Who are BSI? You could have learned about it on the first day a little bit, first day of this Congress, but very simply, this is a global organization which left a very big footprint regarding BIM subject certification, audits and trainings, also on creating international standards, ISO standards, and specifying a few figures about audit days or number of people who have been trained. This proves the scale of the organization and its reach. What is very important for BSI is, first of all, working with standards. And here, starting from British standards, which also in Poland had a significant share in creating the beam market, now the whole attention is focused on international ISO standards. Now we have standards 19650 available with extensions 1, 2, 3, and 5. Extension 4 is now under preparation, under development, and this is a reflection of the British standards so far, but converted in such a way that we can be using them outside the UK. And here, this is a very important question that Polish standardization committee takes ISO standards into account also, and we can benefit from it in our local situation. So it is very important we are not forgetting about documents which can support operation of international ISO standards. And here I'm recalling be it various internet sources or even our national beam standard PL. It is a very important source of knowledge as well, which we can be using in the beam process of preparation and setting up our organization for setting the beam services. And we do encourage you to make use of various sources in order to gain knowledge about beam, how beam is acting. We have the whole range of elaborations regarding ISO 19650 series, which explain how individual standards work. Now they are published only in English, but as a target, I assume that at a certain stage they will be translated into Polish, which will facilitate many people using it. So willing to start your adventure and work with standard 19650 ISO. There are lots of additional sources supporting and helping us understand the idea of how individual standards work. What is very important, this certification has already had its history regarding BSI, and generally since 2011 or even 2016, where in the UK, projects in public procurement had obligatory criterion of beam apart from price. This certification was developing in various segments, both regarding basic beam verification level as well as the extended beam kite mark. In a moment I'll explain the difference, and in relation to organization as well as a specific project, be it road or building, cubature, and to libraries. That means specification supporting suppliers up to current time. When we face implementation of new standards of ISO 19650, which has application outside the UK, and now we note quite high interest in this respect, and by all means we are going towards the international standard ISO 19650. What is very important, certification actually at this level of verification, this basic level regarding specific organization, it actually gives us certainty that the given organization is capable of delivering projects in the beam way, that they have processes and procedures prepared for it, as well as competent personnel. And this is actually the foundation for operation of organization in order to start the beam adventure. So this is the first step which organization starting it can do to start this work. If we already have beam experience and we have already implemented specific projects, we can actually use kite mark, which is valuable in this respect, that it is showing its maturity and real proof showing that we implemented the project in accordance with ISO 19650 standards. So here we are going into details, one project or several projects, based on which we are proving that we are actually doing these projects in line with BEAM methodology. What is really very important, actually, during the whole certification process, we are verifying various standards and compliance with them regarding specific certificates. And here, actually, great proportion of them are based on ISO 19650, and now currently this certification is kept being adapted to new standards freshly issued. I'm talking of 5 and 3 extensions. Extension 4 will appear very soon, and it is addressed at various companies, both construction companies and design companies, as well as developers, commercial ones who can certify office buildings individually through kite mark asset management, or suppliers of specific materials or construction products. And here we have the BEAM object certification. So actually, every participant to the construction process will be able to find that scope of certification which will cover their range of certification in line with BEAM methodology and in relation to ISO 19650. What is also important for BSI is also structuring this knowledge. That means we, of course, start our path from getting familiar with the standards. I showed you additional sources, but after studying deeper what standards contain and how organizations should be adjusted, we have the whole range of educational activities, premature, then deepened through BEAM Masterclass, and finally getting to a meeting where first verification of what we have in our organization is taking place, be it whether we go to the basic level or to kite mark. Here we carry out the analysis, after which we give ourselves time, different depending on needs, and the given organization may still make those processes more efficient to adapt them so that at the audit it actually works. And here this initial analysis displays certain shortcomings, areas for improvement. We also check to what extent the standards from the series of ISO 19650 have been implemented. We can, of course, be using trainings if we need to strengthen our staff in this respect. And finally, we carry out a certification process, be it the simpler one where we do not have any projects implemented, or more complex, kite mark. Here, of course, we leave the freedom for the organization to decide to what extent they are experienced to choose one or the other. Well, actually, these steps can be shortened to a simple 6-step process for obtaining the certificate. I had this opportunity that working still in the UK, I was at the other side of the table, and I was preparing organization for implementation of BEAM processes, which later, as a result, later on, were subject to certification. And I must admit that this is labor-consuming and time-consuming process, but significantly improving knowledge and competences in the whole organization and regarding methods of its delivery. So, by all means, it is worth carrying out. And actually, we have 2 visits. Once the organizational feel they are ready, 2 visits which have to take place. The first one is a visit where we get to know the areas and we get certain report of non-compliances which should be actually made up with. And then second visit, the formal audit, actually verifying processes, people, competences in teams, and finally, certificate is issued for the period of 3 years, but every year there is a brief recertification audit held showing whether organization is developing in the right direction, so whether progress is going on in development of beam, and based on verification sheets the customer receive in advance. So here they act in full accordance with the standard, but at the same time the customer is very well taken care of in this respect. And what we can actually obtain, we can show shareholders that the company is working effectively and keep improving their operations. It will definitely reduce costs and increase efficiency and broaden the market opportunities. So actually going in for public tenders and obtaining new people, because companies that really put stakes on new technology on beam, they actually experience it. We have really many customers from various geographic locations, so I do encourage companies from Poland who would be interested to get in touch with us. I will very gladly help you and suggest how to start your path with certification, and I wish you success in further beam activities. Thank you very much. Martin, thank you very much. So this reference list is really impressive. We have heard a presentation on British Standard Institution benefits resulting from effective beam certification on projects and the company. Next presentation will be given by Maciej Kindler, BIM manager, cost estimation, BIM 5D plus cost estimation, so integrated process of calculating costs and carbon footprint. I do encourage you to ask questions on the chat, of course directed to specific people so that we can identify them. The last 15-20 minutes will be a session of questions and answers. I will find it easier also to manage time once I know how many questions our speakers will have to answer. And then people present online on Zoom platform are kindly requested to stay. A very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maciej Kindler. I'm BIM manager. Most of my professional career I spent working at Skanska at the side of general contractor. I worked both in Poland, Finland, as well as in the UK, where I spent my recent years of work. And I would like to present you today the process of 5D plus as cost estimation process, where we integrated cost calculation and calculation of carbon footprint. And I wanted to describe it based on HS 2 project on which I had the pleasure working on for a few years, a project on which I made strategy, plan of implementation, then implementation, and I supervised the work of team organizing this project. And this is a process quite highly technical, but in today's presentation I would like to show you a bit broader an aspect of this process and give you a little bit more grounds on where from such a requirement for from the customer to organize this process. So, very brief agenda. To start with, a few words about climate change, because this is a significant element which actually stands behind this process. Share of construction in CO2 emissions, and then I'll move on to beam aspects. So initially discussing beam strategy we assumed at this project, and then I will go fluently to 5D cost estimation process in order to finally show you how the traditional cost estimation process has been merged with carbon footprint calculation. Climate changes these days, it's a scientific fact. It's not a question of being convinced or believing. This is a fact confirmed by all most significant scientific centers worldwide, and it is not subject to questioning. I mean, it is unquestionable globally, in global scale. I wanted to ask your attention about warming up. To the cross-section of thousands or millions of years, fluctuation of temperature took place, temperature going slightly up, slightly down in various periods of time, but increase of temperature noted over the recent 40 years is unseen and in the history of our planet, and it results mainly from our activities. How does this influence our life? I'm not doing this to scare you off, but just to make you a bit more aware. For years in Europe, but also worldwide, we face the huge migration problem. It results from the fact that certain parts of our globe stop being livable. This is not serious in our European conditions, but we have a constant problem with providing necessary resources. And biodiversity loss keeps going on. It's not only a result of temperature increasing, but it is a derivative thereof. And acidity of oceans is increasing constantly. Oceans are a sort of free refrigerator regulating temperature of the earth, and the acidity level makes this fridge work effectively. So some organisms are dying out or find it difficult to live. And a noticeable influence is that on our everyday health. You I guess, have your own experience related to smog and air pollution. This is a direct result of our activity and CO2 emissions. There is also a question of economic influence. These are only estimations, of course, and estimations can sometimes be very far from the truth on the period of a couple dozen of years. But economists agree that crisis related to climate changes going on like this will be of significant influence on the world economy, and it will be reducing it quite significantly. This may be a limitation to a degree similar or comparable to 1930s. Well, that swing was periodical, but now it will be a permanent state, impossible to reverse. So we're from this topic, and why are we discussing it? It results from the fact that construction as such, directly or indirectly, has very significant influence on CO2 emissions, and we talk of influence at the level even of 40% regarding global CO2 emissions. And this is influence both through construction itself, but also through units which, by using them, emit this CO2 by themselves. And as you know, we, designing them, have some influence on how they will be working. And already at the stage of designing and preparing them for usage, we can reduce these emissions. Well, as a point of interest, let me share with you that recently I read, possibly I actually confused something, but I read that China every 3 years use the amount of concrete consumed by the US over the whole 20th century. So this influence of construction is really vast. So we're from BEAM. BEAM appeared here because the British government making decision of developing railway infrastructure in HS2 project, actually, which is a highly ambitious plan to build new fast railway, high-speed railway in the scale of the whole country. Project is aimed at connecting 8 out of 10 largest cities. Within this project, hundreds of kilometers of new railways will be built, and several, like a dozen new stations and practically a new network of connections. This is a project planned for the nearest 32 years, and of the budget of over £100 billion. With a project as vast as this one, you can already make some influence on the market, on how these projects are being implemented, and you can create, through such a project, you can create new quality. And in this case, the British government deciding to build this infrastructure set forth some limitations, and the first one was for this infrastructure to possibly least influence the environment and to possibly provide greatest limitation to local infrastructure. And secondly, so that this infrastructure sets forth new trends and create new quality in implementation of projects at this scale. And here we are talking about digitalization of processes where, as we know very well, the flying wheel and the foundation being BEAM, CDS, CDE, GIS, CDE, and all processes we have been discussing over the recent days during infraBi. So, in response to this strategy, we, as contractor, have prepared our own architecture and a plan on how we will be implementing it. Now let me make you more familiar, very briefly, with what this architecture looked like. I will do it based on specific examples, solutions, because this is easier to be visualized than. In our case, CDE function was played by ProjectWise, and this was a core regarding project information. Around ProjectWise, the whole process of BIM modeling and CAD were built, and programs used for modeling. Of course, in case of this platform were ICOSIM, Open Roads, and MicroStation, and these programs were directly connected to what is called managed workspace. This is an environment providing the whole range of templates, libraries, references, standards, which, when creating a file, BIM or CAD files are actually read into the system immediately, making it coordinated and holding a minimum standard regarding data structure created of elements created later. Yet another element was iModel Transformer, or FME, depending on which one we are talking, which allowed us to edit metadata and enrich them by additional information. And the last element was viewer, and in this case we talk of Bentley Navigator, but it may be any viewer which is capable of consuming that load of information. And in the case of GIS, it was MarchGIS viewer. On top of that, Synchro and Costos were connected. That means programs which allow implementation of 4D processes, planning, and 5D cost estimation. And all that was actually connected with SQR basis, which reads in. Well, I'm not working on the project, but the project is going on, so it keeps reading in information from all earlier elements which had been specified. It unifies the information, and through Power BI, it allows to analyze and determine. Analyzing this information and determining whether the information is correct. If everything actually clicks in very well, it creates a well-oiled machine. So why 5D BIM? First of all, it was included in customers' requirements. The customer said that they expect the cost estimation to be built based on BIM models, but it is not the only reason, and first of all, it is not the most important reason. Most important is that in the cost estimation process so far, as well as in calculating carbon footprint, everyone was bunkered and based on own data set, which was not necessarily uniformed with the rest, and left the risk that the data would not be legible, would be incomplete, and first of all, resulted in the fact that lots of activities when data collecting were duplicated. Therefore, we suggested for the cost estimation process to be based on BIM models and for it to become the basis for calculation of carbon footprint. How we organize this whole process itself? Traditionally, list of activities is collected when cost estimating and analyzing project and converting it into project. You collect the list of activities which are to be carried out during this project. In our case, we added one more step. First, we identified objects or groups of objects, because we would not be cost estimating every column alone. So we identified groups of objects, and only those groups of objects through specific templates gave us a list of activities to be carried out, which at the end were cost estimated based on the resources and man-hour or machine hours and material. This is an example of a model which we prepared within this project, 1.3, and as you can see, it is structured and put in accordance with the convention of naming elements, so we can identify all individual elements like piles and reinforced concrete, architectural ones and road ones. Every object has the whole range of attributes. I don't know if you can see them, but let me tell you in a few words what is included in it. It is grade of concrete and level of reinforcement, or the name of the object, the unit the element belongs to. And additionally, what is most important, this element has been fully dimensioned. So high-class, high-grade systems for 5D cost estimation, having the beam analyzing capacity, automatically they break down these models into elements and they do the measurement. After this, we create a list of our activities based on those templates. I have a template for pilings, like I have to specify individual elements like grouting, cutting heads, and so on and so forth, and then I connect it with the elements of the model, creating a highly transparent structure, because whatever I select from the cost estimation is automatically highlighted in the model, and the other way around. So I have a great clarity where from my list result from. And in spite of many years of work with 5D cost estimation, I'm one of the last people who would tell you that 5D and beam model are all what you need. So we are still at the stage where part of this measurement must be actually made more complete based on drawings. And after that, in the same environment where we have cost estimation, we make connection between the drawing and the specification. And we add all activities for cost estimation which have been dimensioned and connected to appropriate elements in the drawings or in beam models. So it is a highly transparent model for work. What does plus mean in all this? So, as we know, everything that had been designed must be cost estimated. And at this moment, we have a connection between a structured, naturally structured database, being beam model, especially if you introduce certain standard for naming and coding, for example, Uniclass, and the cost estimation built based on templates, and also being coded. In our condition, it was something called a method of measurement, but it is the equivalent of Polish KNRs. So thanks to this, we obtain yet another structured database. And to it, in similar way, we allocate unit prices. We actually allocate CO2 costs. And based on one template, we automatically calculate both costs of construction as well as carbon footprint. And we also have a possibility, thanks to this, when the project is changing, we have the possibility to compare and obtain immediate results, telling us to what extent the change introduced increased costs and influenced the carbon footprint. Briefly more about the carbon footprint reduction, maybe 3 points. What we are aiming at in this process, we aim at creating a process which will allow regular measurements, namely following the progress of designing or following the progress of introducing changes and various design proposals into it. And we want to obtain a situation in which once such a design solution shows up and is proposed, to possibly fastest be able to estimate its influence both on cost as well as on carbon footprint, in order to be able to state whether it is beneficial from one or the other perspective. And we aim at reducing through this measurement both cost and carbon footprint. And of course, target, most demanded possibly effect is a process in which following when designers add further elements to beam model, at the end of the day or week, in practically real time, we obtain information about how cost of the given building was increased or decreased and what is its influence on carbon footprint. What we talk of when calculating carbon footprint, the life cycle of a building has been broken down into 4 stages. We talk of the stage of production of materials, producing the material in factories, transport to the site. Then we have the stage of construction. That means all what is happening within our site, construction site. Then the stage of using, and finally the end of use of the building, including demolition. In our 5D Plus process, we address only and solely the first two stages, production and construction. We are not trying to compete with BIM 6D, focused on optimization of the use of the building and optimization of life cycle during use of building. It is only addition to it. So, in a simple diagram, it looks like this, that a binding element is the cost estimation built based on BIM models, to which unit prices are added and prices of CO2 from the library they are collected in, and how is the library created. The library is grouped through methods of measurement. So in our case, it would be grouped based on KNRs, and it merges the cost estimation and the value of CO2. And this is done through number of code of method of measurement and the unit of measurement, because combination of these two values actually results in a unique input into the library. In our case, it could be made through KNR or unit of measurement. Well, KNR could be sufficient, which results in integrated process of carbon footprint calculation. The last element, that means results, in our project we managed to for the first time at such scale, to carry out full calculations of carbon footprint. Thanks to this, we were able to determine the distribution in individual stages of implementation of the project, influence on individual stages of the project, what is the influence of carbon footprint, and what materials have biggest share in it, which automatically allows us to focus our attention at optimization of design solutions using these materials. And the objective, in case of the customer, was highly ambitious. Target was put forth to reach 50% reduction compared to final project. This has not been achieved because we are only at the first stage of implementation of the project. So construction design has been completed, but already based on it, through individual stages, we managed to reduce the carbon footprint by almost 20%. One warning: why should you take care of this? At least at this moment, we have no alternative. We have only one planet we can live on, and there is no escape from it. If we pollute it to the level where it is not livable, there will be no return. And each of us, I hope you as well as engineers, BIM specialists, can influence it, not only in your everyday life by reducing various types of activities or using some alternatives for them, but also in your work. And I do honestly encourage you to think about this also at your work, and to try and design and implement projects in a way which will allow us for the future generations to have where and how to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Maciek. We are still waiting for the returning connection with Marcin Sokołowski. Something went wrong, but let me comment on your presentation. As I was trying, when I was editing my book, I was trying also to tackle the carbon footprint and connect it with the BIM models. And what I observed in your presentation, what I found in your presentation is that the addition process and editorial process of books is takes much longer than technology changes. That's true. Today I will be different in what I wrote in my book. Of course, I'm not an expert in calculation of carbon footprints. I was only involved in the coordination of work, and I was not basing on the knowledge of people who have appropriate education in this. And now we have Marcin with us, and As there are no questions to Waldek, no audio is available now. Okay, so let me start from questions to Maciej. We have more of them go to Maciej, and hopefully we will also get the audio signal before that. So let me start with a comment on Tomek Rajpold. So pandemic decreased CO2 emission by 17%, and I wouldn't like to discuss more on that, as of course we can go too far, and what kind of conclusions can be made on that. But the question goes to Maciek, from Maciej Pszczółka. How is information downloaded from BIM model, which then go to SQL Power BIM? Is data collected dynamically, captured dynamically, and is the change visible in Power BIM? It is not a fully dynamic connection, as for now, the technology offered project-wise does not support this. However, it works like this: that by the end of the week, the regular data download is carried out for all models, and all the information. And and iModel Transformer, or FME, is used for that, and this data is uploaded to the system, Power BI, and on Monday morning, for the teams and directors, the updated condition of the project is provided to the managers. And the question from Marcin Woch: what kind of software did you use to create cost estimates? For cost estimates, we use Cost ES. That's one of the products which guarantees allows to use BIM models very extensively, as it allows to upload BIM model and analyze all metadata supported. So if the models are well arranged, you can create advanced scripts and which can be grouped, analyzed, and create all those data sets. From Tomek Rajpold, how CO2 reduction can be translated into business achievements of contractors. For this contract, there are clearly defined KPIs. So if you meet the KPI, some extra bonuses can be offered. And our observation is that for the customer benefit, not always, but in most cases, the concentration on CO2 reduction also reduces the cost, as optimization usually, in many cases, it is based on using a well-considered construction solutions. Krzysztof Wojsław is asking, what are the goals identified by the customer or the government on reduction of CO2 in the UK? As for the UK and the construction market, it is this 2025 strongly promoted plan, and under this, the 50% of CO2 emission is expected from the construction industry, directly from the construction industry. Marcin Pszczółka, analyzing calculation of CO2 footprint, does that mean that you need to use the local market products? Absolutely. Does that significantly affect this volume? Absolutely. This is an important element. This is not a key element, but important, and affects, depending on materials, it can affect like from single digit to a couple of dozen or so % of decrease. And using of local materials means using of recycled materials, so using of aggregates or steel from recycling process and locally reprocess, so more significantly reduces your carbon footprint. And using the BIM model, can you automatically calculate the cost of life cycle linear investments? Is the value separated into elements, or is it integrated? No, we are unable to do that. In these processes we have implemented in this project are oriented on capex like building construction, and life cycle analysis was carried out in a more traditional way. But with this project, we have discovered some aspects, and we were testing some aspects which can give us some hope that in the near future we will be able to combine all these elements. Anna is asking what data is used to calculate FED, carbon footprint, like transport included, that was included in the presentation or not? That's data from 3 sources. The first primary source is the guidelines of HS2. HS2 provided us a document, and they made some assumptions on key materials, and they also include the distance of transport. These were generalized and averaged data due to the fact that HS2 wanted to have a good comparison among different contracts. And the project is carried out by a dozen or so, up to several dozen of contracts with a couple of billion of values. So they wanted to be able to compare data with the same basis or foundation. So that was the primary source for those key materials. And from the very beginning, it was clear that they will significantly affect. And the next source, that was LPT declaration. And the third source, the library provided by the university. We have many questions available. Let's see. Of course, I would be happy to email the answers. Of course, contact or email Maciek. He will be happy to answer, and he'll be happy to help you. But let me ask Marcin from Tomek Report, roughly, what is the cost of an audit, and can you carry out the audit in Polish? Can you hear me? I needed to change the equipment, so that I'm testing it now. Audit cost depends on a couple of parameters, like a number of employees and the size of organization. So that's the first parameter. The next one, it is, in fact, the type of certification. Is it a first level certification? And these 2 elements are recalculated. So you can send an inquiry to CSI Polska, to my colleague Anna Sawicka, and very quickly you will get a quote. And yes, we can carry out an audit in the Polish language. And the second question also reveals your business model. So how much does it cost, and how long does it take to train? So to carry out the certification process of BSI, I think it is about an organization. So you don't need a training. So if an organization is ready to participate, and if this is very likely that the organization is well prepared for the certification, so they do not have to take part in the training. So training is a complementary aspect. And so you can either use them, you can, for a number or group of employees, and in the scope we will identify. But these trainings are supplementary, and they are not a basis for the certification process, and they are not required. But they can be useful, and they can help you for the certification process. Thank you. Let me use the occasion, and we have Waldemar with us. And let me ask a question. How Leica Geosystem is going to be a part of the sustainable development process? The policy of sustainable development, I think, first of all, we need to understand it, and some kind of self-limitations. First of all, this is what we are expected, looking forward, much forward. We need to think about the next generations. And so I believe the hexagon, like a geosystem, is a part of a large group, hexagon, and we really take care of environmental aspects of our products, manufacturing process of our products. First of all, decarbonization. We try to withdraw from energy sources. Of course, we don't want to be, we are not crazy. We know the conditions, but we support wind farms and solar power generation systems. So this is how we support sustainable development. And next question for Maciej. In the designing process, do you implement some processes to reduce the carbon footprint? Absolutely. So the regular monitoring of carbon footprint, continuous monitoring of carbon footprint allowed us sometimes to achieve things which could be obvious, like replacing of heavy walls with paling and lighter paling structures in the areas where so originally we were assuming heavy walls and that was continued by the constructor based on the previous investments, but based on the detailed analysis, we were able to optimize the designing process. So this is an example. That was another argument in the discussion to even more concentrate on optimizing of the structures, but also in many cases we were also able to replace like ventilation shafts up to 40 meters deep. We totally changed them, and we withdrew from rectangular ones, and they can be spray concrete technology can be applied. So savings on one or reduction for one facility was almost 50%, and the cost reduction about 20%. So the entire process by itself doesn't generate cost, but it forces people to be more creative and more accurate in designing processes. And there's another question, JW. Do you provide do you offer certification processes for individuals? Currently not in Poland. But finally, yes, indeed, this option will be available. It is now available in the UK, and information on that can be found on our website. There are a couple of levels of the certification process, and after each step, you need to take an examination, and you are able to get certification. That's not the case in Poland, but yes, it will be available. And so you need to, these are renewable certifications. Yes. As I remember, I'm not sure, there are 5 levels available, and each level deals with specific subject matters, and you need to take an examination. But I am unable to clearly say if you need to review or renew your certificates. Are you the only company offering the certification? But as in German market, there are a couple of, or you can also use TIEF for the certification process. Can you hear us? Okay, so let's go with the next question. Maciej, what kind of procedures or data or tools do you use to calculate the CO2 calculation, and what standards do you use? Yes, the carbon footprint calculation is based on the standard, British standard BS 2080. In the UK, this is a golden standard which identifies the basis for the process, and based on that, we create or you calculate the carbon footprints on the corporate level and also at design level. And around this document, this is a very general document, but around this document there was developed a detailed process which I have been talking about. And this process, like 5D+, it is an author's project developed by us for the purposes of this project. But it was also very well accepted, and it is being implemented by HS2 as some kind of standard. And together with ICE, there's a British Association of Engineers, We are about to start works on a book to define in details this process. So let me ask the last question. Out of the list of all the questions, I need to select one, and this will go to Maciej. Methods of measurements in the UK are the same obsolete as the Polish contractors estimator. I was taught on that in the socialism, communism time, and still being taught. So I would say the national contractors estimator is indispensable to be able consequently to put order cost estimate process. But in details, this is a very obsolete method and it needs updating. But in Britain, they are being updated on a regular basis, maximum dozen or so years. And methods of measurements, there is a division into individual sub-industry. So we have highway methods of measurements, new methods of measurements, which is directed towards buildings. We have 7 which we used in the project, that methods of measurements dedicated from infrastructure projects, so that so they are much more concentrated on individual sub-industries, and they are well developed and permanently monitored by main contractors and customers operating in individual sector. We need to finish this session, Q&A session. Let me invite you now to a break, and at 11:45 we will be back here for the last plenary session, and we will have 3 more presentations. Thank you very much for now.